Welcome to Paule Podcast, where we are unpacking opinions and changing destinations. I am your host, Sherley, where each week we will chat about how to rise strong out of all types of obstacles that come with relationships. Through personal life experiences and discussions ranging from infidelity, trust, forgiveness, sex, heartbreak, self-love, and so much more. I am passionate and obsessed to provide guidance to every woman to create a better life. Let's dive in, pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. With me, your virtual girlfriend. Welcome back to another episode of Storytime of Paule Podcast. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Pauline, and Pauline is a business mindset coach with 20 plus years of experience working with individuals in various capacities across small to large service-based businesses. Pauline, how are you today?
I'm doing really well, Shirley. Excited to have this conversation with you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So I am going to pass you the mic and you are going to add on and let the listeners know who you are, what you do.
Great. So my name is Pauline Bernado. I'm from the land down under in Australia. And so I've actually been a bit of an adventurer in the past growing up. And I grew up in a chaotic / a little bit heartbreaking, actually a lot heartbreaking environment in my family life. And it's led me to my path now, which is pretty much in the coaching field of personal development. And really what I do is I help ambitious women turn their ideas into reality so they can really maximize their potential.
Got it. Wonderful. Wonderful. So as we start off today, what we're going to start off with is you sharing your story and telling the listeners what got you into the field that you're in right now. Where did it start? Did it start from childhood? Did it start from adulthood? So you can definitely start with your sharing your story.
Yeah, great. The coaching and development journey for me started about 7 years ago. So I had got to a point in my career where I was having a crisis. I had felt that I lost my identity. I was burnt out. I had chronic illness. I just was feeling miserable. And at that point, I remember going home one day from work and feeling all sorts of overwhelm. And I sat at my dining table there. And I just started sulking and crying, and just all this emotion came out. And I didn't really understand it all. But what happened was that one of my friends, she spoke to me and she said, maybe it might be good for you to get a different perspective and get some support to understand what you're going through. And so that's where it led me to calling up her life coach at the time. And basically I ended up signing on to life coaching with this particular person. And she took me through a journey of 7 months of really uncovering, unleashing, understanding more of myself. And ever since then, I've been through quite a lot of change. I would say that I've been through change my whole life. But in terms of the field that I'm in, that crucial pivot point was what led me to get curious about this path and how I could really create impact, but also income from helping other people do the same thing. And that's where it led me to where I am now, where I'm a full-time business owner of a coaching company called Journey to Fulfillment. And I'm all about fulfillment and helping other people pretty much open their hearts, open their minds, and open the pathway towards a life of fulfillment.
Gotcha. Wonderful. So now we're going to go way back into your childhood, and we're going to share with us what your childhood was like. My first question to you, were you raised in Australia?
I was. So I was born in a little city called Adelaide. There's about 1 million people with population there. And my background is that I was born there, and the reason is because my my parents actually were refugees.
Mm.
So they came from Vietnam, and they had to escape the World War there that was going on at the time. I believe it was World War II. And they came on a boat. They had sunk on the boat halfway through, obviously had spent some time on an island, and then eventually managed to get their way over to Australia and landed in Adelaide. So that was pretty much where I was raised at that point. And the backstory to that is that because they came here with nothing, probably just the clothes that they were wearing, literally no money, nothing, no language at all. No understanding of society and culture and where they were headed. They were literally just arrived and had to make the most of their time here. So they ended up starting several businesses, obviously working for people initially and then starting their own line of businesses. And that's really when then I came along. And because they were in successful businesses at the time, it broke my family apart. And there was a lot of conflict and a lot of chaos that were linked to not only money, but also a lot of like family issues as well for the extended family. And that's what I grew up with for the first 7 years of my life. I just grew up with lots of conflict in the household.
When you say conflict, are we talking about parents arguing all the time? And were those arguments verbal, physical? And how were you affected? What kind of conflict were you enduring?
Mm-hmm. It was mental in terms of like feeling like the mental abuse, not having the support there. It was also through verbal because the verbal was affecting the mental. Lots of yelling, lots of, different languages being used. And it was also physical because of the way that their marriage ended up being during the turmoil. As the children, as me, I was also becoming the punching bag as well for a lot of the emotional issues that they were having, and also in a physical abuse as well, because obviously when you're having conflict and you're out of control with that, sometimes it can be projected onto your children. So for me, that was also taking the hit, not only seeing what the violence and things that were going on in the household, but also experiencing that as I guess what you would say is collateral damage as part of that. So there was things with the mental, the physical, and obviously highly with the emotional, because as a result, of the way that the environment that I was in, how I was being treated as well, and sometimes as well the neglect of parents not being around because they were obviously hustling and, trying to make ends meet. A lot of that ended up just being bottled up inside of me, and that led to lots of other issues later on in life.
Gotcha. How many children total?
Can you repeat that?
How many children total did your parents have?
Two. My
Two.
sister and I.
Are you older?
I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest. Okay. And your parents are Vietnamese, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you speak the language?
Yes. So I speak the language, and I also speak my main language, which is kind of confusing, which is Cantonese as well, which is a dialect of Chinese, because my grandparents are from China. And so my parents actually went to Chinese school when they were in Vietnam. And so when they came to Australia, they ended up working with a lot of like Chinese restaurants, and, there was a lot of a Chinese migration happening here at the time. So they thought that the primary language is to teach me Cantonese.
Okay.
And then I picked up Vietnamese, obviously, because the family all spoke together through their primary language.
Okay. So you speak Cantonese, and the language is still pronounced Vietnamese as well.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So you speak 3 languages, including English, because Australians, there's no language in Australia. It's just English, correct?
Yes, it's just English. It's the Australian slang.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So, and very interesting. So now I wanted to ask, what businesses did your parents have?
They owned restaurants, Chinese and Thai restaurants. So they ended up starting up 3 different restaurants.
Got it. 3 different restaurants. And I'm assuming the whole family was assisting. You and your sister were part of the daily things that needed to be done in the business.
Yes, yes, correct. So we spent a lot of time at the restaurants. If I wasn't at school, I was at the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say in terms of my working life, I mean, it started from a young age,
Mm-hmm.
but like officially probably got hired in the business in like in terms of getting paid,
Mm-hmm.
weekly allowance and all that when I was 11. But
Okay.
yeah, I was in the business for a long time, just, bringing drinks to people and just helping out in the kitchen where I could. So yeah, like a lot of work ethic foundations were built from there.
Gotcha. Now, as you got older, what happened between your mom and dad's marriage?
So they ended up getting divorced. And so several things happened. My mother actually ended up leaving us because she ended up in a with someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and so she left and she went and moved interstate. So we pretty much didn't see her anymore when I was 7. So in the personal development world and in psychology, they say that the first 7 years of a child's life is really crucial for their makeup of their entire livelihood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she left at 7. So at that point, I guess for me, I felt that heartbreak was a big, made up a lot of my personality,
Mm-hmm.
and just a lot of turmoil that I had experienced that I didn't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so that's what happened.
So you were 7 years old. You're the youngest. How old is your sister?
She's 12 years older than me. So at the time, she would have been 19. Hmm.
Okay. So that's not anything too crazy. Hold on. Okay. That's not anything too crazy. So 7 years old, what you're telling me is your mother just walked away from her family. She found somebody else and she literally left. Is this what I'm
She
understanding?
left. Yes.
Okay.
And when you say that she completely left, like if that was the impression, not really. I think it was more gradual in terms of like she left
Okay.
and took the furniture, like she wanted all these things. They obviously went through a settlement in terms of the things that, we wanted to keep, which
Mm-hmm.
my father had to pay for to keep our furniture and all of these other things, in their settlement. But she left in terms of taking everything that I had owned at that point was in her possession. As a parent, you have certain gifts that other people give to your kids and all of that, your bank accounts, like all of the things that maybe I was given from other people.
Mm-hmm.
She had taken all of the assets with her. So in terms of what we had left was pretty much the things in our house. But emotionally, she had left, but she had come back a few times to visit, or she had established certain phone calls, over the years, probably over a span of maybe like 5 years. She was still keeping in contact,
Mm-hmm.
but then after that, she had no more contact.
7, 9, 10, 11, 12. So from about 7 to 12, she kept contact with you and your sister,
Mm,
and
mm.
she helped your father run the 3 businesses.
No, so they had to end up selling 2 of their businesses, so he ended up with one.
Okay. So at basically, we can definitely say at 12 years old for you, 13, 14 for your sister, your dad was a single parent.
Yes.
Got it. And so so from 12 years old and on, you didn't see your mom. How old were you again, were you till you saw her?
I saw her again when I was 19.
Oh, that's a long time. Okay, so
Mm,
we'll get into that. So from 12 until 19, which is a crucial time for a young girl. You're 12. I mean, your sister, going through all the things that women, little teenagers go through, getting your period and stuff like that. I'm assuming you could only turn to your sister because
mm-hmm.
your mother, she just kind of like, okay, I'm
Non-existent.
gone. That's it. Did she have another family? Does your mother have more children?
No. She actually, like, to be completely honest, she actually ended up hanging out with the wrong people initially. So
Oh,
um, there was, I think they ended up in the drug game. To be
really?
completely honest, they were in some kind of gangster, like something was happening. So I don't really know too much about those details. I
Hmm.
only remember things like she had to call up my father for money to run away from, her life was in danger. Things were actually happening on her side of things.
Hmm.
So I knew she was in some kind of trouble.
Okay.
Eventually, I knew that when I was 19, I met her new partner
Okay.
at the time as well. So she obviously had gotten herself out of whatever she was in and, ended up with someone new. And yeah, but pretty much like my whole teenage existence, I would say, was without her. That was when I was really just accepted that I was the girl with the single father. My sister had moved away as well because obviously she was in her deep into her studies at
Okay.
university. So then she ended up spending most of her time at university, and then she ended up moving away for work as well.
Okay.
So my relationship was pretty much with my father, during the teenage years.
Hmm.
He was helping me go through my schooling and taking me to extracurriculum classes and all of the things.
Hmm.
And my sister was on hand for any sort of guardian help and advice. And when things couldn't be answered by my father, for example, when I got my period and
Uh-huh.
was freaking out, it'd be like, go talk to your sister.
That's it. Go talk to your sister. I don't even know what
Yeah.
this is. And in this day
Yes.
and age, 2022, if a man is still saying that, as we know, that's fucking awful because you should be well equipped to talk to your daughter about her going through this very important changing time of her life and getting her period.
Hmm.
Of course, things were different back then. And when I say back then, how old are you?
Right now,
Yes.
I am 32.
Okay, so I'm 39. So I was born in 83. So your parents probably my mom was born 58. So your parents were born in the 50s?
In the 50s,
Yeah,
correct.
so that sounds like a legitimate answer because my father, I don't even sometimes I swear when I was a little girl, I don't even think the guy knew what a period was because the word never came out of his mouth. So,
Hmm. There
so
was no like sex education or anything like, it was all that was taboo, or it was just not spoken of in the household.
exactly. Exactly. And I can definitely relate to those conversations not being had in my house as well. You don't talk about
Mm.
that. You don't discuss that. That is forbidden conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and that was pretty much it. The awful thing is when I got my period is my mom didn't find out till literally 3 months after because I didn't feel comfortable even speaking to any of them because everything just was made felt uncomfortable.
Mm.
Nothing was comfortable conversation. Everything just felt like you don't bring anything up unless it was about school, about your grades,
Yeah.
your education. Nothing else needs to be discussed here. So it was
Mm-hmm.
very awkward time. But how would you describe your relationship with your father from 12 to, at least 18? Because, 18, you start to spread
Mm.
your wings. So from 12 to 18, would you say, of course, all parents do the best that they can, but
Mm-hmm.
how would you describe it?
There was love shown in the ways that maybe didn't meet my expectations.
Mm,
So the love is shown through action. It's
hmm.
through taking to school, through, giving me, whatever I asked for, whatever that he could provide,
Hmm.
and providing me with education and just like general advice if I needed it.
Hmm.
The relationship that I wanted is one of love and to be seen.
Hmm.
And so I spent a lot of time, achieving goals and going to do the things that maybe he wanted me to do and trying to please and trying to get approval and all of those things just for him to feel proud. But
Gotcha.
also at the same time, because he was a single father, I always felt like I wanted, and my sister was obviously doing her own thing. I always felt like I wanted to also support and somehow find a way for myself that I could help him out more and maybe give back as well. So there was just a lot of doing energy that was happening, but there wasn't a lot of nurturing energy. And I obviously didn't get that from my mum. I did get some from my sister, but you know, it's different when you have a relationship with your siblings as well. As much as they are there for you and as much as they can play the mother role, you still don't get that sort of void fulfilled.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, it was, I would say that it led me to be very masculine in my energy because I was able to not feel. I was able to block my emotional things and bottle things up, and that's what really led to a breakdown later on in my career. But I was very good at just like, you know, let's take action, let's do all the things and achieve everything that I wanted and max out my life at the time. But I didn't want to feel all the bad stuff that was going on.
Gotcha. Totally makes sense. I like how you said he showed me love in a way that I couldn't understand. And I think that's what a lot of parents do. Through their actions, they feel as though they're showing love. Taking you to school in the morning, picking you up from school, taking you to your activities, making dinner, or just making sure you eat, even if that means ordering something, checking up on you, buying your clothes. These are actions and ways of showing love. And I do believe at times parents really do forget the emotional part of it. And it's not their fault because maybe they did not receive it when they were a child. So it's that generational curse that continues and continues and continues until one of us decides to break that curse. Because I feel a lot of parents feel as though through not just doing, but physically showing your love to your child, a hug, a kiss, you know, simple like affection or having conversation with them or holding their hand and saying, I love you. As parents, we tend to forget and not say it enough. And even me as a mother, I have over the years realized how important that is. Reminding myself when I was a child, I didn't get enough verbal and emotional connection from my parents. Same here, I can relate. It's the doing of how they showed me love. You don't understand how many times my mother have told me all the things I do for you, and this is how you repay me, you know, or, you know, who do you think buys the food for you or the clothes you have on? And those words are very sensitive for a child. Like, let's look at the bigger picture here. I'm fucking 10. I cannot work. So what the fuck do you expect out of this situation? You know, when you say things like that to me. But even as parents, I also have realized and taken accountability that even I myself need to watch my anger and how I talk to a 10-year-old and some of the things I say and realize how insensitive they are. Because as parents, we forget that you were a child at once and there were things that were said to you that were hurt. So why are you repeating the foolishness? Until somebody
and that comes back
breaks
to
that.
self-awareness.
Yes.
You know, and it's an ongoing journey, and that's the whole human experience, is that we're not perfect.
Exactly.
And sometimes, you know, we can just be conscious, hey, we've got to watch the way that we're speaking, because obviously that goes into a child's subconscious like straight away. They don't have that sort of barrier built up. And that actually has long-term effects on them, as it has for me, until I've realized where it's coming from.
Exactly. So now at 19, what was the situation where you ran into your mother? Who reached out to who? Did she reach out to you? Did you reach out to her?
So at that point, I had pretty much forgotten about my mother. I was like, you know, I'm doing my own thing now. I'm like 19. I've moved away from home, living my life, wanted to make a difference, you know, in my career and all of those things. And then I got a phone call, and it was from my mum. And I was like, oh my God, haven't spoken to this person for a long time. So I was like, okay, let's see what she's got to say. She rings up and she's like, the normal chit chat. And then she said to me that, look, I've got cancer. I've got bowel cancer. It's at stage 4. It's terminal. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with the situation and with doctors and finding a cure and all of those things. And she's obviously going through chemotherapy and everything, and pretty much called me up and dropped a bomb, Shell. And I was like thinking, well, it's probably an opportunity to rekindle. Maybe we can at least establish some sort of relationship here since you've been non-existent for a long time. So I was willing. So I was like, okay, well, I care, and obviously you're my mom, and like let's get together and have a conversation. So that was how it all sort of rekindled. However, I didn't realize that it was going to be a transactional thing in terms of when we did rekindle, obviously she told me her story and what she was going through, and, and I wanted to do my best for her and support her. But the conversation went more in the line of talking about her will and, like what assets she had and all of those things, which ended up in the end because of, I think, one little thing that I didn't rock up to a certain appointment that she had set. I came a little bit late. I think I came like 15 minutes late to a real estate appointment or something that she had set up.
Uh-huh.
And after that, I had found out that she wrote me off the will, wrote me and my sister off out the will. So pretty much there was zero legacy of anything from her because of whatever she was going through, the mental health, the trauma, or the anger that she had at that point. So it ended up that happened. But what was really heartbreaking for me and the turning point was that I got a phone call. I think this relationship only lasted about, I don't know, like a month or something. Can't exactly remember how long, but I got a phone call again a few weeks later or a few months, I can't remember. And as I was sort of rekindling and, still having conversations with her and building this new bond, I got a phone call from her boyfriend at the time, and he said that she had committed suicide. And, we need to sort things out and stuff like that. So ended up with another bombshell not long later as I was figuring things out with her. And then I had to deal with all the other things afterwards, the aftermath of like going to court, figuring out what was going on with settlement, her will. And also one of the other things was that we had to organize her funeral. So just imagine organizing a funeral for someone who pretty much was non-existent in your life.
Yeah.
And, having to put all your things to get together, do the things for other people, but then having some guests of the funeral coming up and saying, well, good for you. It's over. It's over. Like, you're going to have a good life now. And just like comments from her family and different people, it kind of showed the character that she was and that she played within her life. There was obviously some other relationships that she had conflict with, but it was a tough time and it was a tough year because I was in university and I was trying to get through all my exams and all of these things, and there's just like one thing after another was happening, so I couldn't really focus. But yeah, that is the story of heartbreak after heartbreak.
Oh my goodness. Did your father help in the funeral arrangements?
No, because they're not, they are not together, and
And
I guess
I'm not, that lady
he's not a
left
part
long
of her
time ago,
life.
huh?
And yeah, so a lot of it, and also it's also a bit strange as well if, he came to the funeral or, with her relationships with her own family and her own friends, because their relationship was long gone. He was no longer a part of that picture. So a lot of the things and responsibilities was left on us as the daughters.
Oh my gosh. So from the minute she called you and telling you she had stage 4 cancer, bile cancer,
Bowel cancer.
bowel cancer, that lasted, you said, about a month. And then you later found out she removed you from the will. She cut contact with you. And then a few months go by and the person that she was in a relationship with now contact you, informing you that your mother has committed suicide.
Yes.
Oh, and you're probably 20, maybe even still 19, because all this is happening in less than a year.
Yeah.
So
So I was still 19.
20, this is the age we're talking about here. All this is taking place.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And I guess the worst part of the experience was that when we did have a look at, I mean, obviously this is more confidential, but I'm willing to share it, is that I received a letter from her about, whatever her last words, you could say, her last words. And on there it was saying something about how I wish I never had you, first of all, and that and you don't love me and you don't deserve anything that I have to give. And I don't love you. And I, basically, I wish I never had a daughter like you who's like, ungrateful to me. So that's what I was left with. And then we had to go and plan the funeral.
Was the letter addressed to you, Pauline?
Yes, it was directly a letter for her daughters.
Oh, daughter. So you and your sister, she's addressing this to.
Yes.
Oh.
So I think there was some personal in terms of like one for my sister and one for me, some paragraphs in there or something directly as to like, about us personally. But in the end, that was the message, is that basically you don't deserve my love and that I'm not leaving you with nothing. And and you don't respect me. So at the time I was really hurt, and I think I was hurt for a very long time because I didn't understand the situation. However, I came to the peace in the end after obviously getting support and getting different perspectives that maybe what I've learnt in terms of forgiveness is that she was having her own issues, mental health, she was in survival mode, she was facing death, like lots of things were going on. And I have compassion for what she was going through, and potentially that ended up having an effect on our relationship and also the words that she spoke or had written down. So that's how I sort of came to peace with it, is that maybe it was just for that timing. Those were her honest words, but that might not be the full picture.
You're absolutely correct. It might not be the full picture. And Pauline, you really truly will never know because you've never really sit down and had a true conversation with your mother to really understand. Your father wouldn't have any information to share. And if he did, he would be the closest thing to even know what was my mother like before I was born. How was the first 7 years of my life? He would be the closest person to know, but he most likely is not going to share that information with you. And based on what you are telling me, kind of making assumptions myself as well, is there mental issues that she suffered that she didn't, take care of? Because listening to your story from 7 to 12 years old, she was really in and out of your life. So I'm thinking about this letter she wrote. Is she really talking about from infancy until 7, which is a crucial age for a child? And what does a child really know? You as the parent have to mold that child. So I'm so intrigued, in knowing you don't love me. What years of your life is she basing that on?
Because it could be for the period of time of that maybe during the years of her absence that I didn't contact her, and her expectations around what does a mother and daughter relationship look like even if I'm not present. I know that some of that has made it to the table because she had mentioned bits and pieces in our conversations that, you didn't contact me when I wanted you to contact me, and you don't say this, and you don't, give me things and stuff. So maybe it was a period of need where she felt like she wanted to be seen, or she wanted love as well, but she probably didn't get it in the way she wanted.
Exactly.
And, and you can't expect that from someone that you also don't give that to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of a ripple effect, and it has its consequences.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And how were you after that? You continued your studies and did you kind of just sweep the situation underneath the rug? Did you talk to your father about it?
There wasn't a lot of resolve.
Mm.
My father didn't really, he wasn't an open
Mm-hmm.
emotional person, nor
Mm-hmm.
did he speak much of it. I think everyone was just a bit shocked about the aftermath and what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't much deliberation, and hence that's why probably I just kept on keeping on, as if like I
Exactly.
brushed it off, and I was like, okay, well, no one's talking about it, and this has happened, this traumatic event has happened, but because none of our family is really involved with her life,
Mm-hmm.
it was more sort of like, well, we feel sorry for her, or you know, whatever they were feeling towards her. Obviously, she was a good person in her own ways towards different members of our family and obviously to my father and us. But then I guess, people hold on to the negative more than they do with the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it does outshine. And so you just hear a lot of different things and viewpoints from different people. And it was more sort of for me personally to just keep on keeping on, to not want to feel the negative energy or emotions because that was inevitable.
Gotcha.
And I just got very good at doing that. Once again, I
Mm-hmm.
just kept on doing what I was comfortable with doing, which was not feeling and blocking everything out. And that obviously had its effects on me.
Yeah, definitely. So how many, you said the last 6 years now you've had your own business?
I started the coaching journey the last 6 years
Mm-hmm.
and, yeah, my own business for the last 2 years.
And what were you doing before you started your business?
I was an accountant. So I, yeah, was in the corporate space
Mm-hmm.
working all different types of roles, but
Mm-hmm.
my main one was accounting.
Gotcha. So how now, through listening to your childhood, very intriguing because your mother wasn't there. She wasn't, it was just really you and your dad. And in your coaching business, how do you, for your services that you offer, and I want to make sure I ask you this question correctly, the way I'm thinking about it in my head, you know, what is your number one expertise when it comes to your coaching business? Do you focus on women that maybe have childhood trauma and try to get under the root of things? Help me understand when a typical client comes to you.
Mm. So what I focus on, as I said, I think I mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
so my Journey to Fulfillment company is all about fulfillment. And the underlying thing to that is that when I said I open paths as well, open hearts, open minds,
Mm-hmm.
to fulfillment, is that what I focus on is helping someone through their limitations to get what they want in a nutshell.
Gotcha.
So business is one of the ways that I find fulfillment because business is all about impact.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you make impact is obviously in line with your values,
Mm-hmm.
but also when you are able to generate income, you can continue to reinvest in your business and also invest in yourself and your own life, right?
Mm-hmm.
To create more impact.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I see the business side of things in terms of fulfillment. What I really specialize in is the mindset side because I do believe that even though you can have the strategy as well, which is what I do teach other people,
Mm-hmm.
is that if you don't have the mindset for taking on the strategies won't work.
Mm-hmm.
Vice versa, if you get given the strategies and you cannot think through your problems, think through your limitations or why there are limitations, then the strategies again won't work. So it's always about having the combination of the two. And I think what I missed out on saying was that if you have the thinking, let's say you've got the big vision. These ambitious women come to me, they've got a big vision, this is what I want, this is my dream life, but they don't have any strategies and they don't have accountability for themselves, then they also won't take the actions.
Gotcha.
So that's why I guess I married the two together, because in essence, that's who I am. In terms of fulfillment, I am about the two things. And what I've really worked on in the past 6 years is really on the mindset side of things. It's all of the tools for self-empowerment. It's about emotional mastery. And this is coming from someone who pretty much blocked out their emotions for like 26 years of their life, to finally unlearn that and relearn, how do we feel? Because for humans, it's all about the feeling, right? In everything that we do. So I really focus on, you could say, emotions. Actually, I focus on the 4 planes, which is the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and the physical, because that's how human beings operate on all levels of those planes. So if I can help them to get alignment and recognize what it is that's holding them back, that's when we create transformation. And that's when I can teach them the strategies to get what they want. And for me, it's specialized around for coaches, because obviously that's my background as well, or transitioning, like people in transition. I really teach them the pathway to get to fulfillment.
Gotcha. And you said the 4 were mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual?
Yes.
Got it. How has your childhood affected or benefited the woman that you are today?
I love this question. I want to talk about the effects, and then we can talk about the benefits. So in terms of the effects, it has given me the flip side. So it's given me all the negatives in terms of my experience of the what not to do or what not to block, or all the things that were holding me back in the past because of my past story, right? And I think the flip side to that in terms of the benefits, even though it was traumatic, it was, full of chaos, is that when I went on this journey, I got lots of clarity, right? And I was able to get, empowered by looking back and going, that was my story and that is the past, and that's made me the person that I am. It's given me the resilience. It's given me the perspectives of how bad it can get on the negative end. Because if I understand how the negative side of emotions and, the dramas, I can really appreciate and be grateful for all the positive things in my life that has happened as a result of me going through those experiences. And so the biggest shift for me is understanding that there's always 2 sides to every coin, right? There's the heads and the tails. If you associate the positive with, let's say, the heads side of things, everyone always wants happiness.
Exactly.
Right? That's like such a big thing in society. That's what we market. That's what we promote. And for me, the fulfillment is the head side. But how do you really know what true fulfillment or happiness feels like, or know that to be true in your life, if you don't understand or have experienced the tails, the negative? If you haven't been through the negative, you haven't had a rock bottom, a career, like a crisis in your life, right? Whatever it is, you won't really fully appreciate how good it can be, how blissful it can be on the head side. So that's my message, is that that's the biggest thing that I've learned, is that maybe I had experienced a lot of negatives in the past, but that's why I can really experience all the positive now, knowing what I've got behind me. And even if I have negative moments, which everyone does, and, I do as well on a day-to-day basis, is that I can really then differentiate and look at things from a more balanced perspective, in that if something is not going my way, or if there's some kind of negative emotional energy that I've got within me, it's going to pass. I know that at some point there's always going to be the positive as well. What can I learn from this experience to get me to the other side? So that's the biggest breakthrough, is that when you have a breakdown, you can have your biggest breakthrough. So there's always 2 sides to every coin.
Exactly. And I like how you said the effects. You kept it as simple as, to sum it up, you've learned what not to do. And the positive part of your childhood is number two things you said, resilience and appreciation,
Mm.
and that's great because I feel like even in the most tragic times of your life, you can always learn something and get something out of it. And that's great. You see the positive side of things, even through what you've been through. Now, three questions I have before. The last question is going to be the big advice you have for women out there. Number one, as a young woman who was raised by a single father for a large portion of your life, what message do you have to young girls out there, or even fathers out there who are single dads who might be listening to this? Or even you can also answer it in a way, and I know there's going to be two parts to it. You could choose to answer whichever one you would like, either how it felt like the message you have for little girls who are raised by their fathers, or, which would be the same thing, maybe not even by their fathers, little girls whose mothers just walked away from their lives and maybe grandma's raising them or auntie's raising them or a cousin is raising them. But when your mother steps away from your life, who is normally the crucial pillar of your life, because, not to sound so mean, a lot of times it's the father that's absent. In your situation, it is the mother that was absent who is supposed to be the pillar. What message do you have?
It's as simple as understand that everyone is doing the best that they can with what they have. So that can apply to anyone in terms of the nurture role. And as simple as that can really make a difference, because it's like you have certain expectations, but some people can't meet that, and that it's okay. But understand that they're just doing the best that they can, and that's all that you can really, and you're doing the best that you can as well.
Exactly.
So at every stage, it's about having that compassion for other people, but most importantly for yourself, is that just for that particular time, it's not forever. It's temporary.
Exactly. And what advice would you have from children who have lost a parent from suicide?
I'm going to take a moment to think about this because I think this is really crucial. Okay. It is okay to feel and go through the experience. And it can be a blessing. It all depends on how you think about it.
And the last is, what is your number one word of advice that you want to offer to mothers, to business women, to women out there who have been through tragic situations in their life? And, how do you dig through the trenches to get out the hole that you're in? Because, it feels like there's never a light at the end of the tunnel. And the dirt just keeps on falling in and falling in, no matter how much you dig and dig and dig. Your nails are breaking, and it just seems like I'm never going to get out of this.
I'm going to say this, and it may trigger some people who maybe don't really understand it. But my message is for this is life is happening for you, not to you. And that little shift between the 4 and 2 is that sometimes we go into the world, we're born into situations that are not ideal. We struggle. There's a lot of hardships, that go on. And we think it's happening to us because it really does feel like that. But if we go deeper in terms of whether it's the spiritual plane, God, source, whatever people want to refer to it, is that everyone is given a certain purpose. It's up to them to find it. And Everyone has a different path as well. And they don't get to choose their path, the family that they're born into, with this situation that they encounter. But a lot of this stuff is placed before you so that you can go through it, so you can face it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a test, Obviously, there's going to be different obstacles, that different degrees of testing. For me, the test is, the family heartbreak and the neglect, and the test of how do I deal with a parent who's suicidal, who's abusive, and all of those things. But everyone's going to have certain tests and obstacles because that's the game of life, right?
Exactly.
That's what I see life as. And so it's not really about what happens to you, but it's how you actually go through it and how do you recover from that. And the more that you go through, the negative things or the obstacles, the more that you are able to see the other side and look back and be like, wow, I actually got through that. And, it was really shit house at the time. And my life was really messed up and all these things were happening to me. But in the end, I realized it was actually happening for me. And that's liberating. So now I almost go into things just looking at like obstacles as, this is a challenge. But when I get through this, it's going to feel fucking good.
Exactly.
So, so I think as when people, really reframe the thought around like, yes, maybe I feel like a victim right now, but I am responsible for my outcome. And my story today or my story of the past does not define my future. It's the steps that I take towards the next goal or whatever opening that I have is what defines me at that current moment. And so just let life unfold for you and like go through whatever you need to go through because that's going to be able to give you contrast. And that's what makes life exciting as well. It may not feel it at the time, but when you actually get through shit, you realize how good it is. That, thank goodness for the shit because otherwise I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be on this path. How would I be able to find fulfillment in other ways? Why would I go out and have courage? What's the point of having courage? What's the point of being happy? Because, for some people on the flip side, maybe they have too much happiness. They also have not enough hardships as well. There are some people who are born into wealthy families or whatever situation they're in. I'm not going to generalize here. But when they have it too good, it can also turn on them when they have things that they encounter. They're like, I don't know how to deal with this. It's too much. I want to give up. Depression because like I've got life too good, it's too comfortable. So it's actually just always the two coins that I see on each side as well. It's not just the negative. It's also when you have it too positive, it also affects you negatively.
Exactly. Life is happening for you, not to you is absolutely correct because we all have choices in life. Every single decision that we make every single day is a conscious choice that we make to do it. A lot of situations we're in, we act like victims. Something as simple, maybe racking up a credit card, but you knew you were making those purchases before and you necessarily couldn't afford what you were buying. But it's easier to say credit cards are bad than to say I handled my money negatively. Because if we can put the blame on something, even if it's a non-breathing item, we are going to blame it because it's just easier for us to take that burden off of us and just put it on something else, and every decision we make is a choice. Every single decision we make is a choice, no matter what it is. And we do have to stop acting like victims because that's oftentimes what we do. And when you made that comment of what is happiness? Happiness for Sherley is going to be different from Pauline. Happiness for my husband is going to be different for our children. Happiness is different for everybody. What makes me happy, the things that may bring me joy, are not going to bring Pauline joy. She's not most likely going to give two shits, but that's okay because it's not her life. It's my life. And perfect example is why this podcast is so important to let you guys know that even through the tragedy that you experience through life, it's not a reason to be a victim of it all your entire life. It should help mold you. Pauline when I asked her what were the effects, that both basically the negative effects of who she is now and the positive effects of who she is now. The response she gave to me for the negative effects is she's learned what not to do. So can you imagine if those things did not happen in her life? If she did not experience those things, she would really not know what to do in certain situations. But even through the dark times, she still was able to say it has made her more resilient and it had made her more appreciative of things. And it's the simple things we need to be grateful for. So the second thing she said is it is okay to feel and to go through the experience. There is shit that happens in our lives that fucking sucks. Rather it's sexual abuse, rather someone close to you take their life, and it could be financial. You can lose everything you have. Everyone's capacity of tragedy is different, but it is okay to go through that experience, because think about it. If you don't experience it, how are you going to grow? How are you going to learn? Mistakes are supposed to strengthen you. Mistakes are not supposed to make you an awful person. It's a perfect, simple example of how many times does a baby have to fall before they actually take their first steps? A lot of motherfucking times. Several fucking times. So can you imagine, as human beings, why are we always fucking penalized for mistakes we make? Because it's not as small as trying to take your first step. I mean, mistakes are mistakes. I feel like as human beings, we're doing the fuck we can do out here. It's hard living in this world. It's really tough. So, it is okay to feel and go through the experience, as she said. And the last one is everyone is out here doing their best that they can. As a parent myself, if I use myself as an example, I know there are things I've probably said to my kids I shouldn't have said that was hurtful. I know there are times where I neglected them, even though, they live in a household with a mom and dad. I know they've probably seen arguments happen between my husband and myself that, maybe we could have handled that differently. But just like my parents did the fucking best that they could, even though there were conversations that we never had and I had to basically educate myself. But shit, I'm not really that bad of a fucking person. So at the end of the day, yeah, they did the best that they probably fucking knew how to do. There's no manual to this shit called life. There's no manual to parenting. Everyone has fucking opinions they're pulling out their ass. So at the end of the day, we're all out here doing the best that we possibly can do. So as we end today, Pauline, all your information is going to be on the website. And what is one last thing you want to leave with us today?
You talked a lot about mistakes, what I just heard. And I want to leave everyone with there's no failure, there's only feedback.
Wonderful. There's no failure, there's only feedback. So as always, listeners, we want to thank you for listening in and tuning in today. And remember to always love yourself, voice yourself, and be yourself. Until the next episode, have a great week, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Fanpale Podcast. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, I want to hear from you. Head on over to the website or join our Facebook community and comment your favorite part of the show or share your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Chat with you next week.